professionally, had started playing shows, and have loved the outdoors since I was a kid. My uncle taught me how to hunt. Of course, that's hunting swamp deer down in South Alabama, right? But have always had a love for it. And when me and my wife got together, she'd asked if I wanted to move out with her. So I was like, yeah, like I can play shows anywhere, right? And long story short, that led me into two things. It led me into Western hunting, and which really set me on a course to learn about black bears or bears in general, right, as well as other Western big game. But then it also the music side of it, which is perhaps a little bit of a shorter story.
What's going on? Welcome back to the RedBeard Outdoors podcast. I'm Jonathan, your host, and here at RedBeard Outdoors, I talk about faith, family, fitness, and the outdoors. I want you to have the best experience of your life in whatever it is that you're pursuing in the outdoors, with your family, with your faith, and of course your fitness, because all of those four pillars definitely tie into my life and have made me the person that I am and on the journey that I am heading towards and currently on with my wife, my kids, and my extended family, and you guys. So thank you so much for tuning in again. I really do appreciate it. If you want to support the channel, subscribe, leave a comment, like. I appreciate all of that. And also, if you're listening on the audio only version, thank you so much. Leave a review, follow along wherever it is, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, etc. Also available on Carbon TV. So go check out the page over on Carbon TV. It's absolutely free to go watch the episodes over on Carbon TV. And you don't have to deal with the ads like you do on YouTube. Whatever makes sense for you. Today we have a special guest, guys. His name is Brett Benton. Brett, first off, you look at him, you talk with him. He's a cool dude. He really is. He loves bear hunting, works at Montana Knife Company. He's just an all-around stud of an individual. But if you haven't heard him sing yet, oh my gosh, guys, he has an amazing voice that you might have to watch your spouses around because he might steal them from you. No, he's happily taken, guys. I'm just kidding about that. But Brett is a fantastic dude, has a contagious laugh, loves the outdoors, loves learning how to hunt every year even better, and has an amazing story. So I'm stoked to share that story with you guys. If you're in the market for the best hunting knives on the market, go check out Montana Knife Company. The link is down below. Every Thursday, there's a drop. There's been some amazing knives up to this point. There's also knives in stock. Excuse me, guys. So definitely go check those out at the link down below. That will support the channel. If you're not in the market, you just want to go browse. Same thing, go check it out, guys. Also, I want to invite you guys over to our group on Facebook, the First Phorm Outdoors Facebook group, the best outdoors group on social media. You want to go check it out, whether you're into hunting, hiking, fishing, whatever, archery, outdoors, anything outdoors, whether it be camping, hiking. I might have said hiking twice. Here's a third time. Hiking, running, whatever. If you enjoy getting outdoors, go and check out the First Phorm Outdoors Facebook group. Let them know RedBeard sent you. I'd appreciate that. And last but not least, guys, if you want to support the channel in any way monetarily, check out the links down below. If you're in the market for any gear, go ahead and save yourself some money. Support the channel over here, and also you're supporting partners that I trust, believe in, the gear that I use, and I want to get you the best deal possible. So all of that to be said, I appreciate you guys. Let's get into this conversation here with Brett Benton and Montana Knife Company. Hey everyone, welcome back to the RedBeard Outdoors podcast. I'm Jonathan, your host, and today we've got a special guest for you. We've got Brett Benton from MKC. He's also kind of a freelance singer. This is something I found out new and recently. He plays guitar. He serenades the whole MKC team when they're on the road. Make sure they're taken care of and get to bed. And, sawing those logs as soon as they can, so they can be sharpening knives for you guys the first thing next morning. No, but really though, Brett's an awesome dude. Family, loves his family. He loves knives. He loves hunting. And we're going to touch on bear hunting today, as well as, of course, as some MKC things, which there's some stuff that, as we're recording now, hasn't quite released yet. but will be released by the time this podcast comes out. So we'll touch on some of those knives as well, and a couple of other things. So definitely stay tuned as we talk about those. But before we get into all the weeds, who are you, Brett? For people that don't know who you are.
So, my name is Brett Benton. Well, first of all, thank you for having me on, man. And my name is Brett Benton. I was born and raised in South Alabama, Northwest Florida. Moved
Tell.
out west and right. I moved out west in 2016 with my then girlfriend, now wife. She was going to school to be a dietitian. So around that same time, I had really started playing music professionally. Had started playing shows and have loved the outdoors since I was a kid. My uncle taught me how to hunt. You know, of course, that's hunting swamp deer down in South Alabama, right? But you know, have always had a love for it. And when me and my wife got together, you know, she asked if I wanted to move out with her. So I was like, yeah, you know, like I can play shows anywhere, right? And long story short, that led me into two things. It led me into Western hunting, and which really set me on a course to learn about black bears or bears in general, right, as well as other Western big game. But then it also the music side of it, which is perhaps a little bit of a shorter story. I was playing music for BRCC at the Total Archery Challenges a few years ago, and so they were the main sponsor at the time, and they had all these after parties. So my drummer and I would you know, we would play these after parties, and I got to meet a lot of people in the industry, and eventually that did lead me to meeting Josh and Brandon at MKC. We were at John Dudley's trailer late one night, and we hit it off, you know, and I had been in touch with them for, you know, a few years, and it was last year I took on a short contract commercial fishing up on the Bering Sea in the middle of winter. It was brutal, but it was a necessary thing that I needed to do at the time. And so I got off the boat, was trying to figure out whether I was going to go back or not. And the contract they wanted me back for was for 5 months, from like July to November or whatever it would have ended up being. I didn't want to do that to my wife. And I've been playing music for a living for 5 years at that point. And so I was like, well, I won't go back. I'll get back to playing shows. We'll figure it out. And I was on a spring bear hunt last year, and I texted Josh. I was like, hey, I want to come see the new shop, which was only a few months old at the time, the one we're currently in. And I did a podcast with him, and then 15 minutes later, he called me about a job. And so asked me if I wanted to move to Montana. And I said, sorry, that's my dog. And
oh, you're good. I'm surprised you haven't heard my kids yet.
Yeah, it's like that sometimes, man. And so asked me if I wanted to move to Montana, and I called my wife because we wanted to move to Montana pretty much since we had moved out west. We were over in Washington State for her school. And so moved over, and you know, here I am. So
that's awesome. That's awesome. So your wife brought you out west, which that's interesting. You know, it's kind of similar for me where I met her out here. I was planning on going back east. I'm, you know, being from North Carolina now, I don't have that deep southern drawl still like you did, and I think you do.
Sure.
My wife says it comes out whenever I get frustrated or whenever I'm talking to my Meemaw back home. But outside of that, yeah, exactly. You know what I'm talking about. And,
I do.
And then when we go back home, she's like, "Oh man," like,
Yeah.
Yeah, that's just kind of how it is. But so she brought you out here to study, which is awesome that you guys, again, that you've been together for so long, and you've gone through these different ups and downs, peaks and valleys, and also being separated with. That's hard work, man. Being on a boat out in the Bering Sea. That's not I mean, you're pulling up some giant crabs, and I don't know what else you were fishing for, but I mean
Yeah.
that's not a forgiving ocean by any means.
Yeah. It's not, man. Especially in the middle of winter. We were fishing for pollock and cod. Everybody knows what cod is, right? But pollock, a lot of folks don't know that pollock is the fish that McDonald's like will make their fish sandwiches out of, or the fish sticks you find in the freezer section in the Midwest or wherever, right? So in 3 months, we did 1 million pounds of cod, and we did or 5 million pounds of pollock. So it was a
in 1
grind,
month or
man.
3 months.
3 months, yeah, 6 million pounds of fish, and cod fishing, that was a 3 week season that we did. So
Wow.
it was intense, man. But I learned a lot about myself out there. I've always liked to think that I have a pretty high capacity for pain and suffering, and that place really taught me that I did and I didn't. I mean, we'd be out there, man, and I think with the wind chill, sometimes it'd be like, I don't know, 30 or 40 below, man, and you're soaking wet, and just getting just slapped around, and it was crazy, man. If I was a single dude, honestly, I probably would have went back. I like those high stress situations, and high performance situations. Your brain is kind of working at max capacity. In our case, not to get hurt or stay alive, right? But for me, that translated from playing music and having to get on stage and like keep it together in front of a festival. You got 2,000 people in front of you or whatever it is, right? And so it was cool. Glad I didn't go back, but it was cool. I like my job currently much better.
Yeah,
So
no, I imagine. That's crazy. So you go from South Alabama to the Bering Sea, and
yeah,
I mean, that's a crazy coincidence. I mean, people don't think about even fishing out in the Bering Sea when you're out east or the southeast,
right.
and for you to come across that opportunities. I mean, that's crazy, and that definitely does. I can
Yeah,
imagine that tests you, and being wet and in negative temps. I mean, that's crazy. And on top of that,
yeah,
not trying not to get seasick. And I mean, if you're stuck on a boat for 3 months, like that's another big thing too. Um,
right,
that's
right.
crazy.
Some folks can't make it with the seasickness. I had migraines for about 2 weeks
Mm.
when I first started because of it,
You just have to
and
push through it.
you really do, man. And when you're out there jumping off the net and you have these 40-pound hooks with these huge braided lines that like you're running back and forth, like you kind of don't think about it. It's really whenever you're laying down or sitting down, or you're in the doing whatever it is that you're doing in the boat, like not really moving around much, that it affected me personally the most. Um, but funny enough, man, it was actually a buddy of mine, Justin Davis, down in Florida, who got me that job. I grew up with him. He does a lot of fishing on the Gulf of Mexico, and so naturally, fishing on the Bering Sea, I guess, is like a natural job for him.
Yeah.
But I ran into him at a show in Seattle one random night. We were playing this club, and it was packed, and people were dancing, and we were getting rowdy, and it was a good time, right? And I get off the stage, and this dude comes up to me. He goes, "Brett Benton." It's like, "Justin Davis." I was like, "Man, what the hell are you doing all the way out here?" He's like, "Oh, commercial fishing, blah, blah, blah." So um, fast forward to 2022, and I'm doing some album release shows. I had released my second album, and one of the shows that we did was down in Pensacola, Florida. And I ran into him again, and I was kind of scheming on what I was gonna do for money at the time, because for the first time in 5 years, like I hadn't really lined up any shows going through the winter. And we had my wife and I had a bunch of particular things happen, like with medical bills or vet bills or like car stuff and things like that. And she was actually in her internship for her degree in dietetics. So we're also on one income. And so, I was kind of brainstorming, and I asked Justin about it, and he was like, "Man, I'll get you a job if you need one." And I was like, "Why not, man? Let's go for it." And I kind of had an idea what I was getting to, but I really didn't. I mean, it's exactly the kind of stuff that you'd see on Deadliest Catch, like breaking ice, taking 15-foot waves in the middle of the night, and huge waves of water coming over the wave wall, and it was intense, man. It was a very rowdy adventure.
I bet.
Is how I like to remember it. So,
man, and, people when I met you and talked to you in person, even now, and I think a lot of it has to do with the Southern draw, but you just come off as such a chill dude. Like,
thanks, man.
I could definitely see you being a musician more than fishing on the Bering Sea. Like,
yeah,
you definitely do come off as more of that musician type, just kind of chill, laid back,
right,
go with the flow. So, that's
right.
cool. I didn't know that about you, so that's really awesome.
Yeah,
So you had that
yeah.
experience
Thanks.
that was out in 2022, and so I mean we're only in
Yeah.
2024. So how long have you been at MKC?
So, I got the contract at the very end of 2022, fishing going into 2023. Got off the boat in April, and then it was May that I stopped in the shop, did the podcast with Josh. I was on that spring bear hunt here in Montana. And then I started in June, and I was driving back and forth until August.
Of last
So,
year.
yeah,
So almost a year now.
yeah.
Okay.
So this month will be a year. Yep. Actually,
Wow.
in 8 days, it'll be a year.
That's
Exactly.
awesome.
So
So have you
for my
done two
start day.
podcasts with Josh then?
I did. I did
Okay.
another one later on, and it was we talked about bear meat.
That's what it
And
was.
go
Okay, so
figure,
that's the
right?
one that I heard.
And
That's the one that I heard, and
yeah,
I was like, that's interesting that you would have got. I don't think that lines up, but that makes sense though. So
yeah.
how did you get introduced to Josh and when I say MKC guys for out there listening, Montana Knife Company, how did
Yeah,
you get
yeah.
introduced to Josh before you got the job?
So I was playing music for BRCC at the TAC events, and who was it, man? I think it was Matt Best and Logan Stark
Mm,
from
mm,
BRCC. They were like,
yep.
so I had met John Dudley in Michigan, that same year, and John's a huge music head, right? And so he had ran up to me like in the middle of us playing. He's like, "You guys are awesome, blah blah blah." I'm like, "Oh, thanks, man." And so fast forward, we were in Utah actually,
Okay.
and um, we had just got done performing, and everybody's partying and doing their thing, right? And um, Matt Best and Logan Stark came up to me, and they're like, "Hey, like, John wants you to come to his camper and hang out and play guitar if you want to." And I was like, "Yeah, man, I'll come." So I showed up, and Josh and Brandon were there.
Mm,
And so I kind of got their ring their ears about the company. And I think I was already using a Speedgoat at the time. So I was familiar with them, and kind of kept in touch. I co-owned a media company, I guess, for lack of better words. It's a company called BCO, and focused a lot on bear hunting and stuff like that, and um conservation over in Washington. I was involved in a lot of the commission meetings about the spring bear fiasco
mm-hmm.
that most folks know about over there, and some other stuff. And so that had also gotten me more connected with the outdoor community. And we were actually using Montana Knife Company's knives through that company too. They would send us some stuff at the time, and um, so I kind of already had that relationship with them. Um, I run into him every now and then, see him at TAC and stuff like that, and that had to have started in. I remember doing up a bear with a speed goat in August of 2021. So it was so since then, really,
Okay.
and June or July of 2021 is when I met him. So sometime around there. Yeah.
Hmm. No, that's awesome. That's awesome. And so you were able to, and this again, guys, just kind of want to hit on some of these things here that he's mentioning. You know, obviously you didn't start out as a top musician with a contract with TAC and Black
No,
Rifle Coffee Company and
no.
all that stuff, right? You worked your way up to that. You put yourself out there, and that's the thing is when you never know what's going to come across your lap, uh, or your plate, whatever you want to say. Whenever you're out there, putting yourself out there and doing your best work and making yourself stand out, stand apart from others. It's just something that I want people to recognize. If you're getting started with a business, if you're getting started in music, if you're getting started in a media or whatever it is that you're looking to do, don't give up because you never know. 4 years down the road,
Right.
you could be. And I don't even know what's your title at Montana Knife Company.
I'm the customer experience manager.
There you
So
go. So you could be a manager at Montana Knife Company. Just saying,
yeah,
like it's something that Brett went out, put himself out there, did what he loved, and he wasn't just leaving his family, his wife at the time, hanging by just like going and pursuing his dreams. I'm sure it wasn't easy because making money as a musician is not easy, especially when you're splitting it amongst a band. But it's something
right.
that you proved to her that you could go out and you could accomplish, you could do. You were supporting her in her goals as well, and you were willing to move around and do whatever you needed to do to make sure that she got her goals accomplished as well. So all
Right.
of that is, for guys out there that are married, it's a constant. What did I hear the other day? And I'm going to get on a little soapbox here for a second about marriage because I this intertwines a lot with gear junkies, people that obviously, if you like Montana Knife Company knives, you're a gear junkie, right? And
Yeah.
that's something that it's not a cheap knife, and so good blades, you use them, you like them, you support American made stuff, and then that tied in with hunting and the some problems with marriage, can always kind of seem to intertwine if there's not good communication. I heard something the other day. It was something along the lines of um, men will date their wives, they'll flirt with their wives, they'll get their best dressed, they'll get nice and cleaned up, clean shaven, put on their best act and everything for their wife until they get her married, and then they're like, now I can relax.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
that's not true. That's the starting point, right? Like if
Hmm.
you if that's how you got her, you got to keep doing that and more to keep her, because again, would you want to date yourself, you know and
Right.
and you got to ask yourself that question too. And so I bring that up because you bring up a good point that you weren't just some traveling musician that was kind of living on pennies and doing whatever. Like, you were making sure to support your wife as well, at the time girlfriend, which is even more of a you know, dedication, because you don't have that binding contract of marriage. And then you get married and you're still making sure to help her support her goals while you're also, pursuing yours. And that's something I want people to take away, if anything, from this. If you're married or you're dating, understand it is a lifetime journey. It's not I've got the ring on her
Yeah.
finger, now I'm good. Now I can go get fat. Now I can go get lazy, and I can go do whatever the frick I
Yeah.
want because I tied her down. That's not how that works, right? So,
Right.
so you did it right, Brett. And I
Yeah.
like hearing stories like that, because
Thank you.
when two people get together and get married and are on the same path, and sometimes you deviate from each other a little bit here and there, whether it be finances, or you've got some other goals that maybe you don't clearly communicate, and you're starting to pull one way or the other, and the cart of your marriage kind of stops a little bit because it's being pulled in
Yeah.
different directions. When you come back together, I'm a firm believer that people that are in a good marriage and talk and have these goals like you guys do are unstoppable. I mean, look at, again,
Yeah.
Josh and Jess. I mean,
Right.
they came together, they put their two minds together, and where's MKC?
Right.
It's now got
Exactly.
60 employees in the 4 years that it's been around.
Yeah.
That's insane.
It
So
is, man. It is. Yeah,
So, yeah.
yeah, to touch on that too, man, like, and I'm not just saying this 'cause my wife just walked through the door, but, I, um, I truly would not be where I am now if it was not for her, right? She has
Mhm.
been a huge source of encouragement. She has been the sane one whenever I've had outlandish ideas that probably would not have worked, right? You know, she's been my biggest motivator and and truly like my partner in crime and my best friend. And so, at the times when it was the darkest, not only would she help me through it, but knowing that I had her would help me
Mhm.
through it. You know what I mean? And it truly made me want to do the most that I could do. And just like you said, like it was like when I started out playing music, I was broken, I was a mess, and she wanted me to move out to Washington, which I was like, yeah, that'd be a pretty good fresh start for me, and so literally I had never been any further west than Colorado, right? So, I moved out there and I worked other jobs, and sometimes she made more money than me, sometimes I made more money than her. That was never really an issue between the two of us because we did have that understanding, and all the way to her doing her internship and I was the only one making money because I wanted her to reach her goals and aspirations that she had worked so hard for during school, you know. And so for both of us to so whenever Josh offered me the job, she was almost done with her internship and she put in some applications and she got a job at the hospital here a week later. You know what I mean? And so I am a big believer in that things work out the way that they're supposed to and that the Lord works in mysterious ways, right? But also for us to go through that journey together and then come out to where we are together as equal players and truly as like partners, right? It is whenever we got married, that truly was the starting line for us. I mean, after we got married, like we went like full bore on the gas for our goals and aspirations because we had that deeper level of understanding, and it's been wonderful, man. It's been hard too, but it's been wonderful.
Oh yeah, that's awesome. That's awesome. And
So
I try and hit on that whenever there is someone on that's got a good marriage, or it tends to come up in conversation because I do want
mhm.
people to understand that it is a journey, and I really I kind of cringe when I hear people say, if she would let me do this and that and blah blah blah. I'm like,
Yeah.
you know, what have you done for her to be okay with you doing those things? Like
Right.
what
Right.
it's a two-way street. And so,
Yeah.
um, it's just something that definitely needs to be touched on by especially outdoorsmen. And
Right.
maybe even if your spouse doesn't share your passions, which I know yours does, but especially
Mhm.
if you're leaving the family or leaving her behind to go and chase animals, that can be something
Yeah.
too that can be a sore spot. So, especially if you don't come back with things too frequently either,
Oh yeah.
that could be
Like
something too.
me
Where she's
all
like,
this year.
yeah, she's like, what are you doing? Just playing Rambo up there in freaking mountains? Like what?
Yeah, yeah, no kidding, man. It certainly helps that she's a dietitian and I introduced her to wild game. So like,
Mm,
that certainly worked out in my
mm,
favor, right? But also she's very physically fit, so she also enjoys being out there too. And
mm,
so I think that no matter who you are, like you have to find somebody that that really understands you and you can understand them and to kind of have like that equal playing field, right? I mean, because there's a lot of times that I go out and don't get anything, right? Um, a lot, you know. So, including this whole spring season, I've been gone a lot, but
yeah,
so it certainly helps to have somebody who's kind of just there with you.
yeah, no, for
So,
sure. So you got introduced. So you're playing music for TAC, which I'm surprised I
mhm.
never. I guess I don't really go to the after party thing, so maybe that's why I never really saw
Yeah.
you. But and then I think I first met you in person at TAC last year,
Yeah.
at the booth, and that's where we were
Yeah.
chatting, and I was trying to sell you on certain tents and things like that that you were looking at.
Yeah. Yeah. That's right, man.
We were talking about all
That's
that, and
right.
then just the energy that was brought. I feel like you know, all the vendors out there are great, but I'm kind of sad. First Phorm, we won't have a booth out there this year. But that
Oh
energy that was
man.
brought behind, I know, like I've had so many
Dang,
people reach
man.
out, and between MKC and First Phorm, like that, those energies at those booths were just insane. Um,
Yeah.
and yeah, there won't be
Yeah.
anyone else running up the freaking ski lift mountain this year.
Yeah. And I
Did
remember
you stay?
watching
Yeah, you
y'all
remember
do
that?
that.
Oh
Yeah.
man. Or
Yeah.
jumping in the lake, which we didn't officially get in trouble for that. We did have some people reach out to us on social media, be like, "Oh, that's illegal," blah blah blah. We're like, "Okay, thanks for telling us."
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah. Sorry.
sorry about that.
Sorry.
We're just
Yeah.
having fun, you know. It's just, but
Yeah.
no, it was definitely a good time, and you know, again, meeting you in person at TAC. And so with Montana Knife Company, actually, let's go into bear hunting here for a minute because I'm a newbie to
Sure.
this. We talked about it
Sure.
last year in April-ish. I went up and kind of half-heartedly we're looking for some bears, mainly helping a buddy de-winterize his cabin, which didn't really take a ton, but we were up there just to check on it,
Yeah.
make sure everything was good. It's a beautiful area up there in Idaho that we were in, but we didn't see any bears. Found out later it's kind of
Yeah.
prone to you know have a lot of grizzlies. Saw a lot of elk,
Right.
which that was exciting. There was a
Yeah.
bird. I can't remember the name of it, but oh my gosh, it was the most annoying freaking bird in the world, and I can't remember what it was called. I'll have to figure it out. But then we
Yeah.
caught a crap ton of fish too. I think it was close to their spawning, so they
Nice.
were just all
Nice.
over the place. So anyway, it was a lot of fun. Had a lot of fun, but I want to know more about bear hunting outside of just joining Facebook groups and learning from the
Sure.
Facebook group, you know, where the bears
Sure.
are.
Yeah.
If
Yeah.
you guys don't
Yeah.
know that trick, definitely reach out to Brett or me, and I'll tell you about it. But yeah, talk
Yeah.
to me about why bears for you. Why did you go so heavily into black bears when you started hunting out west? Why was that the animal that really stuck out to you? Brief interruption on this amazing conversation here with Brett. I appreciate you guys. I really do. Thank you so much for everything that you do as a supporter of the show. If you want to continue to support, highly recommend BlackOvis. Over there at BlackOvis, you're going to find all the gear that you need, everything from late season to waterfowl season to turkey season to big game season that we're in right now, guys. I'm out currently chasing elk using a lot of the gear that I've gotten from BlackOvis. Absolutely love their pants. The Cottonwood Creek pant is my favorite, but there's been some new items added to the lineup, especially for that later season. The vest that just came out from BlackOvis is my favorite piece around camp to take the chill off in the morning and also to keep you nice and warm right before you tuck into bed at night when you're out camping or hunting or whatever it may be this later season. So go check out BlackOvis. Use the code down below. Use the link. Enjoy the gear that you receive. And trust me when I say that these guys know what they're talking about, what they're doing. Excuse my dog in the background. I guess someone came by and he had to let us know. But I appreciate you guys. Now let's get back to the conversation with Brett.
It's kind of hard to say, really. I mean, I've been fascinated with them since I was a kid, right? I mean, most folks don't know this, but like we have bears in the Florida swamps in Northwest Florida, you know, or parts of South Alabama. Um, they're not huge bears like you get into out west, or especially over in the Carolinas, like where you're from. You know, there's some giants, or the Northeast, or you know, I just had the thought, I guess, I'm gonna learn how to hunt bears when I move out west. I can't- right, and so
Your wife
my
didn't
first
talk
time
you out of this
hunting,
one?
no, no. So in I moved in 2016. I didn't hunt out west until 2018. I was putting all of my efforts and energy into music and playing shows and booking shows. And so I didn't hunt until 2018. Did not see a bear at all, ever. I mean, I saw bear scat on a road one time, and that was it, over the whole season. 2019, I saw one bear. No, I guess I saw a few. I saw one hunting out where we lived. We lived way out in Index, which is like in the middle of nowhere, and like right at the base of Stevens Pass in Washington. I mean, it's way in the middle of nowhere. Beautiful. We were surrounded by national forests and the Skycomish River, and it's real thick, dark country, and the place was full of bears. And my wife and I were working for this company that like services cabins. So I mean, we clean them. I do maintenance on the hot tubs, like whatever, right? And we were running the bears out there. Ran into one hunting. That was a sow with cubs. And at some point that year, it had to have been, maybe that was 2018. So in 2019, opening day, I went out to this area that someone told me there was a bunch of bears in, and there wasn't. There was a bunch of people. Summertime, in this area, like there's these lakes, excuse me, and I mean, I'm driving up this road, and there's like groups of like 15 people with floats and all kinds of stuff coming down, and kids wrecking their dirt bikes in front of me. And I get all the way up to the very top where the trail is, and a boonie bashing up this road, and I'm thinking that there's gonna be nobody up there, and there's like some Volkswagen parked up there, and I'm just like, oh golly, man. And shoot, no, this was in 2020. So let me back up again. I've done so much hunting, for bears, I get my dates mixed up. So 2019, I'm in this area, and my wife and I are driving down the road, and it's, maybe the second or third day of the season. And we're driving down the road, and it's dark. It just gotten dark. And I'm like, I never shot a bear and had barely seen them, and I'm talking all big and bad, like, oh, they go nocturnal because they get smart, and they get big because they go nocturnal, blah, blah, blah. And no lie, man, in the middle of me saying this giant bear runs across the road in front of my truck. And I mean, I could damn near see his back up to the hood of my truck, and I slam on the brakes. Yeah, slam on the brakes, and we both gasp and kind of go quiet for a second. I almost hit him sliding. And I'm like, see, I told you they go get big because they go nocturnal, and I looked for him. He was in a nasty creek bottom, man, an expansive creek bottom on top of that. And so, I mean, it had to have been half a mile long in the bottom, right? And like brush taller than me. Look for him, never did find him. Fast forward to the next year at this different area, opening day, kids are wrecking their dirt bikes, all that stuff. But I did call in my first coyote on that hunt. And it was opening day, August 1st, right? And I'm like, and I've been practicing predator calling. For anybody listening, like bears are very vicious predators. So they eat deer fawns, they eat elk calves, and they will cannibalize bear cubs it'll put the sows back into heat, especially in the spring. And so it'll put the sows back into heat so they can rebreed them, right? And so predator calls are really effective from late spring into the fall. So I called in a coyote the night before, and I'm like, should work on a bear. So I'm trying to think of where nobody's going to be. And I'm like, well, I saw that bear last year, and there's nothing to do in this area really recreationally. Like there's no lakes, like there's no big hiking trails or anything like that. It's, and it takes some effort to get out there too. And so, well, I'll go there. So I get out there, and I pull up, man, to like the drainage I'd seen him run out of last year. And I'm like, ooh, that's going to be good. And I'm going to walk the ridge top. And I get there and there's this van parked there. And I'm just like, man, you've got to be kidding me. It's me and one other vehicle, and the van is parked right at the drainage that I want to hunt. And so I'm all fired up, and well, I'm just going to go through the creek bottom. And I'm crawling, like literally, like, I mean, crouched down, sometimes on my knees, crawling through these bear tunnels. And then, like, but 100 yards in, I start seeing like Red Bull size, like scat, like Red Bull size and diameter. And I'm like, oh man. And it's pretty fresh, a lot of it too. So I make my way through the bottom and I go up the ridge on the other side, and I'm sitting there and I'm looking around, and I can't really see much in the bottom, but there's some open spaces. And I start predator calling. I learned how to predator call watching some videos, but this guy, Douglas Bose, over in Washington, he wrote this book. It's like the #1 bear hunting book in the USA. Right. And so I bought this book and read through it, and he has a whole section on predator calling. And that's kind of where I learned my techniques, because I don't use an electronic call. I use a hand call because you can put more emotion into it. Right. And you don't have to be nearly as repetitive. And so I sit there for about 15 minutes, let things quiet down. And then I start calling. And I'm not thinking anything's going to happen. Like, I have zero confidence in myself as a pretty new, not only bear hunter, but Western hunter, like on my second year in, right? And so I'm doing something, man. I kind of had service at the top, and I'm doing something like checking an email or something like that. Probably booking shows, right? And I happened to look up, dude, and like this big black like Volkswagen Beetles running across the bottom, like, and I'm like, oh my God, and I'm like, oh, and I'm like kind of like panicky. Right. I'm like, so I try to call him up and he won't come, man. And it gets dark, or starting to get dark, right? I mean, we're getting on 8 o'clock here, and I'm like, dude, I gotta get back through these bear tunnels. And now he's down there. And whenever you call bears in, a lot of the times, not only are they curious, but they're aggressive, especially big boars, because they come in hungry, right? And I had seen him down there breaking branches, and like I could kind of hear him huffing at the bottom and like clacking his teeth and stuff. And so I'm like, oh boy. And I'm like, this is gonna get Western real quick, man. And so, but my whim was good. That's the one thing. I'm like, I never did see him cross like kind of the direction that I have to go. Yeah. If I run into him, I have a rifle, right? So I mean, like, oh, we'll see. And I get down there, and I'm like, I get down. So you kind of have to like, you get down to the bottom, and right at the bottom, the brush meets you like this, right? But there's like a slight, very small trail that runs across the bottom, and the brush is taller than me, and it kind of goes down, right? And then you kind of cross the bottom. And so I get in there, I'm looking around, I can't see my way out, and then I'm like, oh dude, I went the wrong way. And I'm like, I'm kind of in a hurry, right? And so I turn back around. I'm like, I'm just gonna have to start over. And I turn back around and I come up back to the brush line. And as I'm coming out of the brush, I look to my right and I see this giant bruiser black bear, dude, just do coming across the bottom. And I'm like, oh my God. And I just lifted and shot. I mean, he was coming so fast. He had to have been 25 feet. And so I just lifted and shot, right? I saw black in my scope, and I just lifted and shot, and he goes down, and I kind of back up starting up to the ridge, right? I'm like hollering all kinds of cuss words, man. I just shoot again. And he goes down, and I couldn't believe it, man. And that kind of, so he ended up being a Boone and Crockett bear, and he ended up being almost 6.5 feet long. That was my first bear, right? And second animal I ever called in. And that, if I was not obsessed with him by then, I certainly was like, right. And so, I'd shot a bunch of them after that, put in a ton of effort. My schedule also allowed me to learn really fast, 2. So that was a big part of it, man. Now spring bear, and so I cut my teeth in Washington, right? So spring bear is a little bit new for me. Like I've been on a number of hunts, haven't taken, too many spring bears. This season in particular has been tough. I've been doing TAC events for MKC, co-managing those. And so, I haven't really had a ton of time to get out there. I love getting out there in the spring. Like, don't love the hours, right? Where it's light at shooting lights at 5 a.m. right now, and it ends at 10 p.m. So I mean, you can probably see how tired I am. Right? I mean, I just got back from Michigan yesterday, and I went and picked up a new rifle, and I worked out, and I played with the dog and visited with my wife, and then I just went out to hunt because I'm like the season ends on Saturday, right? And I did get into 2 bears last night though, and so they were on private property, so it didn't do me any good. But so you really kind of like some people just kind of have it's almost like a sickness for it, I guess. Like, you know what I mean? Like it can, I was talking with Joe from the Bear Foundation about this. Like there's not a day that goes by that I don't think about bears or bear hunting. Right. And so very thankful to now be in the outdoor industry where I can, kind of capitalize on that and get to learn from folks and exercise, some of that.
For sure. That's amazing. And yeah, I mean, that's good that you had the reaction you did with that bear because it could have gone
no kidding.
very, very differently. Some people freeze in those kind of situations. And that could have been bad, but no, that's awesome. So you got hooked on bears. Was the bear? Did you say that was your first big game animal that you killed?
No. But it was I'm trying to think. I did not. Maybe I did shoot a deer in 2019. So where I lived, I blacktail hunted, and it was like any buck. And I'm a very firm believer in that for me it's all about the meat and not the caliber of the animal, right? And now that I have more experience, like now I'm a lot more picky and choosy about my animals. But at the time, dude, like I truly just wanted meat in the freezer. So I've shot these little blacktail bucks over there. So he had to have been like my 3rd Western big game animal, maybe 4th.
Yeah.
So
that's awesome. That's cool.
Yeah.
That's I can't remember who it was that said they started big game hunting. Their first big game animal and first ever hunt was with a bear. Like,
yeah.
I'm like, man, I can't imagine that being your first one. But for the life of me, I've only seen I think 3 bears in my entire life. And I know they're out there, but it's just like
They
mountain
are.
lions. Like I've seen maybe 3 in my life, and one of them was already dead. So it's like it's one of those things. It's like they're there, but if they don't want you to know they're there, you'll never know it. And so
exactly. They're smart critters, man. Mm-hmm. Like they definitely smarter than what folks give them credit for.
Yeah, and I just want to talk a little bit about that too, because it's not like so bears and so there's ungulates or I don't know how people pronounce it. I say ungulates, but deer and elk and moose and that sort of animal, they don't live as long as a bear can. Bears can live. I'm trying to remember what the oldest bear was that they recently said was the oldest bear they found up to this point, but. What is it, like 20, 30 years or more?
I think it was 36 or something like that, which is way, or maybe 33, way up there.
Yeah, that's crazy. That's crazy. But on average, they can live to about what, 20, 25-ish, something like that.
Yeah, lower than that actually. I mean, usually like the average age of harvest on a bear. So it's kind of hard to say, right? I mean, older bears, well, they live longer because they're not getting shot, but the Yeah, right. So it's kind of hard to say, but like the average age of harvest, you're looking at like anywhere between 5 to 9 years old. I
Okay.
mean, and I would consider 6 and up a mature bear. You start getting up at 8 and 9, you're really starting to get into really mature bears there.
Yeah.
So
I'm gonna have to look this up though, because obviously those aren't the ones that are living, because they need to be plucked from the group, right?
right,
Let's
right.
see. I'm gonna look this up real quick. But with that being said, they live longer than ungulates usually do.
They do.
Even
Yeah.
if they die of natural causes, if a bear was
Hmm.
to die of natural causes, um, it lives longer than a deer or an elk or any of
Yeah.
the prey animals. Um, let's see. So between 20, no, hmm, I have to look this up. All right. Anyway, so tell us more a little bit about your knowledge of bears, why it's important to go after them, to hunt them, because they're not these cute,
Yeah.
cuddly things that maybe PETA makes them out to be. They're not
Yeah.
Winnie the Pooh. They're not
No, they're
necessarily
not.
after. Yeah, they're not after people per se. I mean, there's only a handful of reasons why, or less than that, that a black bear would attack a human being. Basically, if you're in between them and their cubs or them and their food, and that's pretty much it. Other than that, they
Yeah.
generally run away or don't want to be around
Yeah.
you. And so that's why you don't see them very often. Otherwise, you'd
Right.
probably see them a lot more often chasing you down. And so, tell us why is it so important to for us to be involved in that, especially people that like myself that enjoy hunting deer and elk and antelope and all the prey animals. Why is it important that we go after and help with predator management?
Yeah, there's a number of reasons, man. I mean, the probably the most common one that people will cite is ungulate populations, right? And deer and elk fawns. They deer and elk they drop their fawns and their calves in the spring. Like in the past couple of weeks, I mean, although I've only been home like 1 or 2 days a week for the past like 6 weeks. Um, the I've started to see the fawns dropping, and even last night, man, I was predator calling at these bears, trying to get them to come in. Now the boar ended up being too interested in the sow, who didn't really want to come in. But I actually had does coming in, white-tailed does coming into the calls because they thought that there was a baby fawn that was in trouble, and they'll always come to investigate. Yeah. So I don't know. Honestly, I'm not entirely sure when like the elk calves, drop. I don't know if they've already dropped or like now's the time or whatever, right? But I do know that the deer fawns have dropped, and those boars, they're eating these spring grasses, and so as they're cruising, they'll come across these fawns and just like viciously tear them apart. Man, it's pretty brutal to watch. Um, but also it helps um from a predator management perspective. It also truly helps to manage the predators by taking out mature boars. Which allows cubs to grow up. So, like I mentioned earlier, um, these boars come mating season, like the rut, right, which is right now here in Montana, probably other places out west. They will chase down these sows and they'll kill the cubs to rebreed her, right? So if you were taking mature boars out of the population, which there's plenty of them, right? I mean, you shoot one, another one's gonna come and probably end up breeding her,
Yeah.
right? But especially because the sows will kick off the cubs after 2 years. She'll send them to be on their own and grow up to be more vicious predators. you know, but the boars will kill the cubs. So I mean, killing these boars from a management perspective will allow these cubs to grow. You're trying to stay away from shooting sows, which I mean, I shot sows, right? Usually in the fall, by then they'll have kicked off cubs. It's something they normally do in the spring if they're going to kick them off, right?
Mm-hmm.
So it allows these sows to have more babies, even if you're trying to stay away from the sows too, right? So I mean, it's multifaceted, but then the last thing that I want to touch on, and perhaps the most overlooked one, is the fact that when there are too many bears on the landscape in a certain mile radius, like you don't want that density too high because it spreads disease. They compete for food sources, so at that point you have bears start to spread out, and that's actually when you start to have those human bear conflicts, right? Like I think it was last year in the fall that it was the first time in a long time that a human had been killed by a black bear, right? Not a grizz. Grizz is a whole nother thing, right? But it's the first time in a long time that someone has been killed by a black bear, and we're starting to see the number of black bear maulings going up, especially in places where they can't be managed effectively, right? Like California doesn't have a spring season, I don't believe. Washington no longer has a spring season. Like you have places like Idaho, Montana, Wyoming, even Oregon that's a draw only season. Um those human bear conflicts are, at least like physical maulings or things like that are still way down, right?
Yeah.
Um so it's a tricky thing. I mean, no bear hunter really, like, I mean, if biologists were like, we can't shoot any more bears for the next 5 years, I'd be like, well, I have no clue what I'm going to do, but fine. You know what I mean? And so, like, my whole personality would just have to be somebody else, I guess. But,
Yeah.
but, so management is important, man. And that's any predator, whether it's wolves, whether it's lions, like they all do have to be managed the same as deer and elk do. So,
It's, yeah, you say that, and it is interesting to think about. They need to have a healthy respect for human beings as well.
yeah.
And it's not, if you just kind of let them roam and encroach. Obviously we're encroaching in some of their territory by our growth
Yeah.
in numbers, and our
Of course.
development and such. But also, like, if they look at us as more of a food source rather than, a predator, that's where I feel like just kind of surface level, obviously there's a lot more in depth than that, but that's where a lot of the conflicts and issues happen. That's why like grizzlies are a lot more aggressive towards people than black bears, because there are less
Yeah.
grizzly bears, and they, they're naturally more curious and more aggressive, in what they do, and they're bigger, as brown bear
Yeah.
family members, and so they want to know what you are, and
Right.
and then they get aggressive, when they realize you could possibly have food that they want, and
Yeah.
that's just kind of how it is. And so with black bears, I feel like they have at least uh, developed a fear of humans enough to respect
Hmm.
their distance, unless they're in these areas like California, Washington. I saw there was a video, I think it was last year, of, you were talking about some of the biggest bears in North America, the Northeast, up there in New Jersey, which people don't
Yeah.
think of New Jersey having black bears. It's such a coastal, urban style situation, but they have some of the biggest black bears in the
They
U.S.
do.
And they aren't allowed to be hunted. And
Right.
from what I understand, I don't think there's a hunting
They
season
weren't.
for. Okay, so they were.
Yeah, they are now. They had a season. The governor was like, "We're getting rid of it," and a year later, the governor was like, "We screwed up, and we got to have this
We
back."
kind of need, yeah, yeah. So
Yeah.
there was a video of this lady, though. She was going to go take her kids out to the school bus, and it was in the middle of the rut for the bears, and these two big
Hmm.
old boars were fighting in her front yard, knocking over trash cans. Like, in the
Yeah.
city, these two boars were fighting in her front yard, two big old massive black bears. I mean, that's scary. That's a scary situation. And so,
Oh yeah.
um, that's definitely something that and that people need to recognize, that bears need to have that
Right.
healthy just fear of people, fear and respect of people. So with that, going out and hunting them, contributing to conservation as well. Because if black bears, mountain lions, they go untouched, they will also just eat, as much as they want, as they
Right.
fill. I'd say even more so, wolves play with their food and don't really. They kind of leave
Mm-hmm.
some waste. Mountain lions seem to not. I don't know. From what I understand, they seem to eat what
Yeah.
they need a little bit
Right.
better. But bears, I was just looking it up here, and so from the same source, which is basically Nat Geo, which I trust. That's a non-biased. They're definitely not
Yeah. Oh
pro-hunting by
yeah.
any means. Um,
Right.
but they say that elk generally live, if they were to live their full life cycle, between 8 to 12 years before they would die of old age, basically. And bears can live into their late teens and 20s,
Mm-hmm.
just if left untouched. And obviously, there's
Right.
those one-offs like what we mentioned, the 36-year-old bear. That doesn't happen very often, but yeah, just I mean, right there's almost a 10-year gap difference, and
Right.
bears generally have two cubs versus an elk
Mm-hmm.
having one calf. Um,
Right.
so they're obviously replenishing their population a lot quicker, and
Mm-hmm.
the other thing too is black bears, like you mentioned before, they generally go after the calves. They don't, unless they're starving. You don't find black bears taking down live, healthy elk, deer, etc.
Right.
Mountain
Right.
lions will, but bears generally
Mm-hmm.
scavenge, or they go after the calves, the weaklings, or a sick animal if it gets
Yeah.
left
That
behind.
too.
Yep. So it's I don't know. There's pros and cons. I don't agree with like Utah, where they just deemed mountain lions basically a varmint that you can just kill. You don't have to have a tag. You
Yeah.
don't have to, like, there's no season. I don't agree with
Yeah.
that either. But also just cutting
Same.
it out and not letting people hunt is definitely something that's a problem as well. So there's the two
Yeah.
extremes. We got to fall somewhere in the middle.
Yeah. Oh yeah, man. Oh yeah. And it is. I mean, and really, you can kind of see it in like even with Grizz right now. I mean, like, so grizzly bears. It's a Ursus horribilis, right? Like they are named that because they have a horrible temper, right? I mean, I would assume that's why they're named that, right? I don't really know. I wasn't there, right? But when they named them, but
Yeah.
they are a lot faster to anger, and be territorial. They also roam a lot more too. And so I was talking with when I was hunting with Joe at the ABF, I was kind of ringing his ear about some of the grizzly bear stuff because in Wyoming, like, grizzly bears are a considerable problem, and it's becoming that way here in Montana too. Has been for quite some time, but especially in the past few years, it's really exploded. And so he made the point that in places like Glacier National Park, places like Yellowstone, there's staff on hand at all times to haze those bears away from people, and so those bears know to keep their distance. But then you get outside of the park and there's nobody doing that. You know what I mean? And so these bears are not, they don't have that learned behavior of, hey, like, maybe this thing that walks on two legs is probably not something I should mess with. And so there's that. And then the other thing too is, as far as roaming, you have the greater Yellowstone ecosystem. You got the Continental Divide ecosystem up in northern Montana that's also full of grizz.
Yeah.
And outside of those recovery zones, they're not really counting uh, the numbers of grizzly bears outside of those recovery zones. So
I didn't know that.
where Joe and I were hunting was outside of one of those recovery zones. We saw 11 grizz in 4 days,
Hmm.
right? And we did not really cover like a ton of area. We kind of just focused on a few areas. So that also tells you just how many there are on the landscape. I mean, we can't be everywhere at once to know. And so, and especially when you start having the number of attacks going up, I mean, it's a complex problem, man.
Yeah. Yeah. No, for sure.
So,
Um,
yeah.
that's definitely something that Man, that's a whole nother topic.
It is. It
I don't
really
agree with
is, man.
not being able to hunt grizzly, but
Same.
I just feel like, and I'm gonna, obviously, as I progress through my hunting years of hunting and everything, I'm gonna add more of the predator hunting into it. It really is a
Yeah.
time thing for me,
Yeah.
but I do
Yeah.
feel like we need to definitely be, if you're willing to hunt, an elk or deer, and definitely when I go out of state, like to Idaho, I just buy a wolf tag,
Right.
because at least I'm donating, to
Exactly.
Idaho's wolf management in some way. And even if I don't see one, if I do see one, I can shoot it. If not, at least I've donated, because I feel like if I'm going to go into another state or even my own state, I should help both sides. If I'm taking a deer or an elk, I should also help with the predator side as
Yeah.
well. And I encourage people to do that. And I think it was like $50
Mm-hmm.
going to Idaho. Just that's a good donation. It's going to a good cause. But
Yeah.
with that, I want to dive into a little bit more of the culinary side of things. You obviously like bear meat.
Yeah.
For
I
people
do.
that, we're not going to get too into the weeds here, guys. But I do want to recommend people go and listen to the podcast over there with Josh, the Josh Smith Show, where he goes into a little bit more in depth on bear culinary ideas with bears. You can go check out Brett's page as well, because Brett's got some amazing ideas on how to take care of bear. Because if you don't know, I definitely encourage, if you're going to go out and kill it, outside of coyotes, I recommend you should eat it. If you're
Right.
going to kill a
Right.
mountain lion actually tastes really good.
Yeah.
Bear is good. I haven't gone down again the path of canning it and all these other ideas, but give us your top
Right.
2 favorite ways to prepare bear meat. Why you like bear meat so much as well.
Yeah.
Give us those
Yeah.
little tidbits.
So my first and foremost favorite way to do it is using a sous vide, which I put out an article in Bear Hunting Magazine about this, as well as on MKC's website under field notes.
Mm.
But you can actually use a sous vide to not only tenderize bear, but you can use it to sustain a temperature that kills trichinella. Right, the USDA, through the Food Safety Inspection Service, put out a bulletin on the required temperatures to kill trichinella in pork, is what it was. It was in 2018. And so at 144 degrees, it's killed instantly, which is only like medium, right? As far as like steak temperatures goes, everybody's like, you gotta cook it well done. You gotta cook. Yes and no, right? It's a little bit more complex than that. I mean, technically, at 144, like, you really don't have to cook it well done, but every square inch of meat has to hit that temperature, right? So
Mm-hmm.
you can use a sous vide, um, because at 140, it's like 2 minutes. At 136, it's like 6 minutes. And as you go lower in temperature, that temperature needs to be sustained longer to kill the trichinella parasite in meat. And so I've been eating medium or medium rare bear since 2020,
Mm-hmm.
and have not one time been sick from it, you
Okay.
know. And it helps tenderize it. Bears have like these really thick muscle grains, and so even though like that cut of steak on another animal can be tender,
Mm-hmm.
on bears it does tend to be a little bit chewier. So a sous vide will help with that some.
Yeah.
um and I tend to shoot fall bears more than spring, and have, you get more fat like in later it gets in the year. They are putting on fat for burning that off while they're denning up through the winter, their fat storages. And so you get this meat that's more marbled with fat, kind of like beef. I personally really nerd out on processing, so I'll leave like a thin fat cap on my steaks where applicable, and then sous vide it and then sear it, and it's almost like a sweet beef. I mean, it's truly unlike anything else I've ever tasted. Like a super flavorful. And I guess See, this is where it gets tough, man. The second one is gosh. So neck roast. Man, that's tough. That really is tough. But I would have to say neck roast. Neck roast have more like tendinous tissue, more collagen. To me they tend to be more flavorful, and when they break down, they also tend to be more tender. They tend to have like more fat, more juicy parts to them.
Okay.
And this is for any animal, really. I mean, this is not only bears, but like, elk and deer and stuff like that. But
I've personally, like just recently, so it was funny because I've been messing around with cooking different game meats, and obviously elk and antelope are our favorite, with mule deer after that, and moose.
Yeah.
And this is the thing, I don't know what is up with the different cuts of moose. I helped a buddy pack out the moose, and he gave me a whole hindquarter. It was like 2 years ago, and as we're cooking it, the first time I cooked a package of steaks that had been processed, man, that was some of the like it was right up there with elk. Tender,
Right.
awesome, amazing. I cooked some up this last Sunday. Same packaging, same company, same leg of moose, and it was tough as I don't know what. And I was like, shoe leather. I mean, and I cooked it the same way. I cooked it to medium rare, and and I thinly sliced it, because everything else works great that way. You just scoop up a couple pieces, mix it with rice or whatever. Serves really well, serves a bunch of people. And so I had to take that moose, instead of getting rid of it, which I don't recommend people doing, just throw it in the crock pot with whatever your seasonings, throw it on low, and that will just break it down. And that's actually what I've got tonight for dinner.
Nice.
That's just that, because there's some, I don't know what it is. Sometimes, again, that same leg produced the same cuts of meat, but one cut was really good and tender. The other cut was just, I mean, it was tough. It was chewy.
Yeah. So I think the reason behind that, and this is also why I'm so particular with processing bear, really just my own animals in general, which it's a time thing, right? Like some people have the time for it, some people don't.
If I had the time for it.
Right, exactly. I mean, and even then, like right now, man, I got so much stuff in my freezer that I still need to process, and I haven't done it since September because I have just been balls to the wall, since I started working for MKC. And so, but different cuts of steak from the hindquarters. Like I take all my steaks from the hindquarter and the backstrap and like tenderloins too. I quit taking them from the front shoulder. Like they just never really did it for me. I typically will grind those parts up. And some parts of the hindquarters too. It just kind of depends on my situation. Like if I'm low on steaks, I'll use both hindquarters, right? But different muscle groups. Who was it, man? It was Danielle Pruitt from Meat Eater and Wild and Whole, who I actually watched a video of her like explaining this stuff on an elk quarter. And she went through the different muscle groups that she breaks it down and how she breaks it down, right? And different muscle groups, some will be more tender than others, right? And that may be because of connective tissue or tendons that are running through the muscle that you can't see whenever you cut the steaks. Also, man, it could have been the butcher like being in a hurry and like cutting with the grain instead of against it. You know what I mean? It could be something as simple as that too. So, but again, like you said, I'm a huge fan of slow cooking bear just because those muscle grains are so thick, and so it really does break it down. I do shank roast.
I mean, it's hard to go wrong with a roast, man. You just throw a bunch of ingredients into a crock pot and just let it cook for 8 hours, 10 hours, get it super tender and just let it fall apart when you put it out on the and the whole house smells like it. Like it just, oh man. Yeah.
I love it, man. It is, man. We actually have a neck roast in the fridge right now that my wife is going to be doing at some point this week while I'm out hunting every night, trying to salvage my bear season,
Yeah. So neck roast is your second favorite. And then, so you just do that? You do the crock pot where you just kind of throw in a bunch of ingredients and
Yeah.
flavor to taste,
Yeah.
and then you just let it sit.
Yeah, it is an honorable mention that smoking bear is a third. I'm pretty new to smoking meat, but I've taken a front shoulder, like a bear butt, if you will, and have smoked that and made pulled bear off the bone. Absolutely delicious. I've done bear ribs, and the first time I did them, they were so good, dude. I mean, they were kind of marbled with fat, and like I couldn't believe it, And second time I did them, it was like same thing, like eating shoe leather, and I don't know if that was user error. I don't know if it was the quality of rib because I let them get freezer burnt. I'm not really sure what happened there. Um, like I said, I'm pretty new to learning about smoking, so and it really in the first place, the ultimate reason I wanted to hunt bear, other than they were being so mysterious, is because I'm a very like experience driven person and very food driven. And so to me, moving from the South, I was like, man, it's kind of simple minded. I was like, man, eating bear meat sounds pretty cool. And so I think I want to do that. And honestly though, as long as you're attentive to what you can't really go wrong with it. And so what was the other question that you asked again?
So your two favorite bear meats, and then oh man, or bear, I guess, ways to cook bear, and then I forgot. I'm gonna have to go back and I'm gonna remember it later.
Oh shoot,
Get off
man!
This, yeah,
Yeah,
we're good. So with we got the two favorite types of bear, and like I said, guys, go back to the Josh episode, the Josh show, or the Josh Smith show with Brett Benton, so you can go over a little bit more in depth with that and how to cook it. But this episode is going to come out probably late July, so we've got, I don't know, probably a month and a half from now. There's a couple of things that are coming out before then. Are you privy to be able to talk about them, since I'm not launching this episode until the end of July? Because I know about them. Okay. Okay? Then we won't.
If you drop me a hint, then I might be able to. It just kind of depends.
Okay. So, well, first off, what's your favorite culinary knife up to this point?
Honestly, aside from the Smith River Santoku, the flathead fillet, because it is a long blade that I actually use mostly for processing. So
yep, cool.
Yeah.
So but my question, I guess, is because I don't know when it's going to drop, but they've hinted about it with the Bearded Butchers, obviously a boning knife. Is that going to replace your fillet?
It is. Yeah. Okay. It is. It is. I can't remember if it's shorter or not. Because the final models actually went to the Bearded Butchers, and so so that they could start using them. I want to say that it might be a little bit shorter than the flathead. I could be wrong on that though, but the blade profile is different. It's just the handle ergonomics are different. The blade shape is different, and I want to say it has a slightly thicker spine, and it has more depth to it. And so those things, it depends on the situation, right? Like last year I managed to get my bear out whole, well, gutted but whole, right? And so it would have really come in handy whenever my bear was hanging in my garage, right? But at least getting whole quarters out. I like to take my quarters out bone in if possible, because then I can have my bone in shank roast and my bone in neck roast, and then leftover bones I used for making wild game bone stock. And so, which is a labor of love in itself, right? But using those boning knives, man, like I would be more, how should I say this? Because I trust my fillet. But I guess if I had to choose between the two, I would go for that boning knife first, for sure. I mean, and they are sharp.
For the butcher area, and then maybe the fillet more for the kitchen.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, like if I'm trimming a steak in the kitchen, that's when I would be reaching for that fillet knife, you know. And
Okay.
it is a little bit less flexible than your typical fillet knife, which is why it does make for a good processing knife.
Mhm.
Um it's a little long too,
Yeah.
you know. So that boning knife, you know, it's I mean, those dudes at the Bearded Butchers, man, they are like the pinnacle
Mhm.
of what it means to butcher and process, right? I mean, I
Mhm.
literally just messaged Seth today and I was like, hey man, like, you know, just wanted to drop a line and you know, say that like you guys are a huge inspiration. I wish I could have been at the PA TAC to meet you guys, but I would have like rang your ear for hours
Mhm.
about
Mhm.
questions about that kind of stuff, right? And
Yeah,
so
that's why
we
Josh couldn't
design
get here.
those.
Okay.
Yeah, right. I know I would have ruined the whole after party. You know? But you know, so the opportunity to design those knives with those dudes, like
Mhm.
truly truly will make those knives workhorses, man. And that's
Right.
why we partner with the people that we do to design stuff, because like we're not ever going to be the best at everything,
Mhm.
you know. So you know, why not get help from our friends essentially,
Exactly.
you know.
Exactly.
So
No, that's
it's
awesome.
going to be killer, man.
So you would say fillet and sentoku, which is those are the two kitchen knives that I have personally as well.
Mm-hmm.
I love that sentoku blade, man. That thing is
Yeah,
it's
same, man.
that thing is fantastic. It's not like the
Same.
bighorn is awesome, but it's big.
Mm-hmm.
It's
It is
definitely
big,
good for like chopping things quick, like the way it rocks back and forth. But that
right?
Santoku is I don't know, man. That thing's awesome, and
Yeah,
I like that reverse Tonto look as well.
same.
That's definitely that's a cool look to it. So there's that, and then the cleaver recently came out. Um, do you use that much in the kitchen, or is that more of like a timepiece?
It is more of a timepiece to me right
Yeah.
now. That's just because of the kind of stuff that I'm doing. Like I said, like I'm pretty new to using a smoker, right? So you
Mm-hmm.
see people using a cleaver either like, you know, some people are using it for barbecue, like for dicing up pork and stuff like that, getting like real small pieces of meat. Um Traditionally speaking, uh you know, cleavers are used for splitting like chicken, right? Whole
Mm-hmm.
chicken, stuff like that, which we do eat some chicken in the house. It's mostly wild game. And then you know, splitting actually like hard fruit, you know, is something that a cleaver is really great for, right? And
Mm-hmm.
like I kind of had to I never really used a cleaver until we came out with one. And so I had to kind of do my own research for answering like customers' questions about why they should get a cleaver, right? And asked Shelby, our product line manager. I'm always asking her questions about knives that are coming out because she is like she's so knowledgeable about every single one, you know,
Mm-hmm.
and is a very integral part in that design process, you know. And she's awesome, man. And she's a wealth of knowledge, and I happen to work right next to her, and so I
Mm-hmm.
could just bother her all day about it. And she was the one that pointed out to me that you can like take it and you kind of seed it and then use it to like split heavy fruits, like, you know, you use it for like pineapple or melons, especially, you know, they have that tough outer skin. um I've used it on some meat just for the sake of grabbing something else other than my santoku.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
Oh, that's cool.
um
That's awesome.
yeah,
I definitely
yeah.
recommend people check it out. You know, it's recently and before this comes out, I'll have had an episode with Tristan as well where we talk about
Hmm.
the some of the knives as well that we're fond of, and that Santoku seems to be a favorite, man, when it comes to the kitchen.
Yeah,
It's not too big and it's not too small. It kind of does. It's the workhorse. I feel like
right.
of those main three. You know, the Bighorn Chef, the Santoku, and then the little is it the little Bighorn?
Yeah, the petty is what we
The
call it.
Petty.
And so that's
Okay.
actually my second favorite, man, for vegetables. um you can kind of get into those tight spaces a little bit,
Mm-hmm.
like bell peppers, for instance. Whenever you're kind of cutting like those rinds, on the inside. The part of the bell pepper you don't really eat,
Yeah.
You can get real surgical in there for stuff like that. And so,
Mm.
but yeah, the santoku, like it's good for vegetables. It's also good for steak. It's good for chopping like that. The way that the blade comes down at the tip, right? You put your hand there, you use it to chop, kind of get that rocking motion and that leverage. So I've enjoyed using it, man. I really have.
No, that's awesome.
It makes the experience a lot better.
Yeah. So I guess, I mean, is there anything that we haven't hit on that you want to share with the listeners as far as either, MKC, bears, culinary stuff? And we could go down the whole line. I'm learning culinary stuff myself, but yeah.
Yeah, same. I mean, I'm still pretty new to it, man. No, other than, if for whatever reason you're listening to this and you haven't heard of Montana Knife Company, which I know that you are super proactive about, talking about us and sharing us, which honestly, we all really appreciate. And thank you for having, some of us on the podcast. But if you haven't heard of us, check us out, man. We're very pro hunting. We're very pro conservation. We donate to a lot of conservation organizations or just flat out partner with them. And then like just get out there and get after it, man. If you're new to bear hunting or predator hunting, man, like people get weird about it. But just like deer and elk, and the same reason that we hunt deer and elk literally is about management and numbers from a government perspective, right? So, and we want to see healthy populations on the landscape, and that goes for bears too, and or all predators, and they're still delicious to eat, and it's just another food source that you can capitalize on. So if you're somebody like me, or like yourself that mostly eats wild game as their source of protein, like why not add it to your freezer?
Exactly.
And you get a bear rug out of it, which is pretty cool too. So,
Exactly.
So.
No, I love it, man. That's awesome. Well, I appreciate your time coming on here today. And I won't get you in trouble talking about any knives because we don't necessarily have the launch dates for some of those. But man,
Sure.
I will say, guys, and you guys know this already. I'm not spoiling anything. There's big things coming with MKC. Just like there's already been some big things that have happened. And by the time again this has come out, there's other knives that have launched that you've not seen before. I know right now while we're talking this week is the Blood Brothers. The why am I Blackfoot 2.0, but it's a red blade with a carbon fiber handle. I mean that thing is that's one of those knives that I would not want to use, and I know they want you to use it. You would, yeah.
I wouldn't. No, I wouldn't personally. I would not, man.
No, that would be
I would not, dude. That thing
it's
is
funny because I tell people I'm like these right here, and then all of those right there.
I can see him back there. Yeah,
the ones I don't feel bad using them, and some of them even have some little spots on them from where I didn't treat them too well, and they got that patina, right? Which
same.
Go ahead.
Oh, I was gonna say, I'll say, man, like we have an incredibly wild year coming up, a super wild year for models. I will drop some hints. I think they won't fire me for this, right? But we will be improving some models. We will be, as already has been announced, we'll be expanding on our culinary line. And as Josh has already talked about, and his Brandon has already worn on his vinyl harness in public, like we will also be doing some tactical knives that we're working on too. So I can leave it at that. I can't really go into anything else, but it's gonna be cool, man. We're all super excited. We've been working really hard at it. So
100%.
But
100%. I couldn't agree with you more, man. It's cool to see the growth. You guys definitely want to be a part of it. And we're not saying either, and you heard this in the podcast with Tristan, like you don't have to buy all the knives. If you have a question about one or two items that you're wanting, maybe you want an all-around good hunting knife, maybe you want an all-around good kitchen knife, you don't have to buy the whole set. You've heard it here. The Santoku does just about everything. I've even
It does,
gotten
man.
some of the silver skin off of my deer and elk as I get it out of the freezer with a Santoku. That thing it's a
Right.
workhorse.
Right.
But if you do have it in your funds and your budget to be able to go out, definitely, I mean, you can't go wrong with getting multiples. So,
Yeah.
with that being said, I appreciate you coming on, Brett. Guys, go check out
Yeah,
Brett. I'll
man.
leave him down below, and also any of his shows or anything that he's got going on. Probably more local now at this point because you're tied up with
Yeah.
MKC, and Josh keeps you running
Yeah.
around like a chicken with his head cut off.
Yeah.
Well, I'll leave those links down below, guys, where you can find them. Also, MKC, I've got a link down below that you can use as well that will help support the show as they are partners of the show. So, with that, I appreciate you, Brett. Thank you so much for your time, for your information, and guys, go check them out. And of course, get out, live your life, and love it.
Thank you so much, man.
Awesome conversation with Brett. Hope you enjoyed that conversation. Definitely go check him out. I'm going to leave the links to where you can find Brett down below, along with Montana Knife Company. There's a lot of knives that are currently in stock, guys. So if you've been in the market, go check out Montana Knife Company. The link down below, it will help support the show. And also you can get a good idea of why Brett loves working over at Montana Knife Company, just from the amazing knives that they make over there with Josh and the crew. So go check out Brett. Go listen to some of his music. Go check out Montana Knife Company and understand why I appreciate their knives, why they're the knives that I use, why they're in my backpack or on my body every single day. Also, guys, leave a review if you're listening to the audio-only version. If you are on YouTube, subscribe, drop a comment. I want to hear your questions. I want to know more about you as the listener. We continue to grow here on the channel, and I just want to say thank you so much. I really do appreciate you. Last but not least, have a fantastic season. Whatever it is that your season is, if that's whitetail, mule deer, elk, bear, moose, maybe it's fishing that's coming up. Maybe you've got some good waterfowl trips coming up. Maybe you just enjoy the fall weather and the leaves changing. Whatever it is, go check out First Phorm Outdoors Facebook group. I want to see you over there, guys. Let them know RedBeard sent you. Build your community, because we all know that community is key in continuing whatever it is that our goals are with our faith, family, fitness, and getting outdoors. It is super important. So looking forward to seeing you over there, guys. Let them know RedBeard sent you. Have a fantastic rest of your day. And of course, get out, live your life, and love it.